When it comes to sewing, I love the challenge and satisfaction of giving old things new life, especially when it means turning thrifted finds into something beautiful, useful, and one of a kind. Hey there, my name is Jess and I'm the founder of Sallie Tomato. Today I'm going to show you how I upcycled a few secondhand garments that I found while thrifting or that I had at home and turned them into pieces from our Seaside Escape Pattern Collection. I found a variety of unique pieces, from well-worn shirts to my husband's torn up jeans. And what's special is that each of these pieces had a story before and now they get a whole new one. So let's take a look at what I found, deconstruct each of the items, and I'll share how the projects came together along with how the finished projects turned out at the very end. This blue striped shirt had a crisp nautical vibe. I knew it would be perfect for the Olivia knot bag. The fabric draped nicely and held the shape beautifully. I read through the pattern to see where the center of one handle would be, and I'm going to try my best to cut out the piece with the button detail in the center of the handle. So it will be an offset detail that I think will be really cute. First, I'm going to start by removing the side seams. A quick way to open up the side seams is to cut a small snip along the seam and then use your hands to pull and tear the fabric. And by removing each of the side seams, I'll be able to lay the front of the shirt flat on my cutting mat. Also, before I cut out the pattern piece for the front, I'm going to stitch this front opening closed by just stitching in the ditch of one of the side seams next to the bound edge. In order to further secure this bound edge, I'm going to top stitch between each of the buttons to secure that fabric flat. This shirt is still going to be a little difficult to cut with the sleeves on, so I'm going to continue cutting open the rest of the seams of the shirt. I used some chalk and my ruler to find the center of where the buttons are located and measure out where the handle width would be, along with the rest of the size of the template. The stripes on the shirt actually helped a lot with making sure that I was keeping the buttons centered and cutting straight. It was also really helpful to use my rotary cutter and cutting mat to make sure that I was cutting straight and accurately. Here is one panel cut out, and then I need to cut one additional panel. I did end up cutting my piece wrong, so I had to trim the width measurement and add on an additional length of fabric, which I cut from the shirt so that way I could match up the bound edges and the lines on the shirt. I finger press the seam open and top stitch each side of the seam for extra detail. Then from the back side of the shirt, I cut the remaining exterior panel. I made sure that the stripes were running the same direction from the top to the bottom. And now I have two complete exterior panels that are ready for interfacing. We've added a link in the description below to the Olivia tutorial if you want to see how this adorable evening bag comes together. The finished bag is so charming. The soft structure really brings out the Japanese-inspired design, and I love that you can still see some of the shirt's original seams. It adds a whole new chapter to the bag. It's really important to me that nothing goes to waste here. So the same shirt that was used for the Olivia bag, I used the sleeve to create a coordinating purse scarf. And to make a purse scarf, essentially all you need to do is make a simple cut, a narrow hem, and then you have a chic accessory that elevates the look of any bag, or you could even wear it as a hair accessory. And the next project is the purse scarf. There is quite a bit of fabric here to work with, and I'm thinking I can get the length that's needed for the scarf out of most of the sleeve panels. However, I will definitely need to piece my lengths together to meet the required length for the pattern. So I'm gonna get started on deconstructing this piece. I love these button details on the side here, so I'm definitely gonna save that, which could potentially be used as a little strap or pocket detail for another project. I do have lots of additional fabric that I can work with on the back side of the shirt. However, I'm gonna see how far I can get with the sleeve panels. I want to get the best use out of my fabric as possible, so I'm gonna start at the very edge of the sleeve and cut my strips going across. So I am shocked that I got all of the pieces that I needed cut out from one sleeve, and I have an entire sleeve left over. I'm gonna set the sleeve aside with the back panel of the shirt. I will be able to cut out the lining pieces for the monogram pouch out of the sleeve, so that way I can use more of this pretty fabric. So now I'm gonna piece each of these strips together to create one long length of fabric. I'm going to start by straightening up each of the ends of the strips. And then I'm going to place the fabric right sides together and sew each of the pieces together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. As I was cutting out the strips, I did not check if the stripes were going to line up. Since this is a stripe, it would definitely be more challenging to make sure that all of the stripes lined up. However, since this is a small accessory piece, I'm going to just sew the pieces together as they are. Now that all of my strips are pieced together, I'm going to take this over to my ironing board, give each of the seams a good press, pressing the seam allowance open to help distribute some of the bulk of the fabric, and then continue on with the purse scarf instructions. We've added a link in the description below so you can follow along with the steps to create your own purse scarf. This accessory adds just the right pop of color and movement. I love that it's lightweight enough to tie around your wrist or even wear as a headband. Denim is such a great material for pouches. It's classic, durable, and easy to work with. My husband can be very tough on his clothes, so he has a stack of well-worn jeans in his closet that I pulled a pair from and immediately saw the possibilities for upcycling. So looking at the jeans and some of the pocket options along with the cut size of each of the exterior panels, it looks like the back pocket is a little too large for this project to fit on the front panel, so I can always save these jeans for another project that I can reuse some of the pocket pieces. So like I mentioned, there are a few rips in these jeans, so I'm going to avoid those areas. However, it could be a fun feature if you're making a pouch for perhaps one of the kiddos in your life to add a fun novelty cotton print behind the rip, so that way perhaps a character face shows through or a funny little saying. Repurposing apparel into bags is meant to be fun and creative, so try your best to think outside of the box in ways that you can utilize the most material possible. A quick way to open up the side seams of jeans is to cut a small snip along the seam and then use your hands to pull and tear the fabric. Otherwise, you could certainly use your seam ripper and run it along the seam to remove the stitches. I'm going to avoid this worn out area. I could certainly use this seam as a focal detail along the center of the pouch, going either horizontally or vertically. First, I'm going to start by cleaning up and trimming off this bottom edge of the pant leg. Another important thing to pay attention to is the stretch of the piece of apparel that you're working with. For bags, generally you'll want the stretch of the fabric to run along the width. So I'm going to measure and cut my pieces. For this project, all I need are 2 panels. I'm going to save these jeans for another repurposing project because there is a lot of fabric here. Before I begin constructing the project, I'm definitely going to fuse some interfacing to the wrong side of each of the pieces to help prevent some of that stretch. For these jeans, I'm going to use a lightweight woven interfacing. We've added a link in the description below to the free Monogram Pouch pattern. You can follow along with the video tutorial to learn how to construct this project. And here's how the finished pouch turned out. I had just enough of the blue striped shirt left over to use for the lining, and the contrast adds a fresh coastal touch. It's compact, sturdy, and totally unique. This linen shirt had such a fresh coastal look with the stripes, and it was surprisingly structured, which made it a great option to use for the lake backpack. Linen can be a bit tricky if it's thin, and this one had enough body to hold the shape without extra interfacing. Next, I'll be cutting out the front contrast panel of the lake backpack pattern. I know that I want the pocket to be part of the front panel as additional storage. I went ahead and looked at the instructions, and I know that I want the bottom edge of the pocket to be 4 inches up from the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to start by buttoning the shirt closed and top stitching the front of the shirt so that way the front becomes all one piece. I was so excited when I found this top because the linen is so soft and elegant, plus the buttons on the front of the shirt have a shell appearance, so I think they're the perfect accent embellishment for this project. So similar to before, I'm going to open up the side seam of the shirt. And then I'll repeat for the other side. So now I can open up the shirt and see how much fabric that we're working with, and it will be much easier to cut with the shirt flat. So I'm going to start by measuring the width to see how much fabric that I'm working with. Since the front panel of the lake backpack is quite large, I know that the buttons are the center of the front panel, so I'm going to align them with the center measurement on my cutting mat. And again, since I'm working with a stripe, this will help me make sure that all of my side edges are cut straight. It's not guaranteed that the fabric itself is straight, but it's nice to have as a guideline for cutting. You can always cut about 1/2 inch extra just to make sure that you can square up your piece so the edges are even. So after measuring, I know that the inside of this blue stripe should be the right side edge of my panel. So I'm going to start by cutting that. And I only need 4 inches of fabric below the pocket edge. So I'm gonna have a lot of excess fabric that I'm going to end up using to piece to the top to make sure that the panel will be high enough. In order to make this a little bit easier to work with, I'm going to cut the bottom edge of my panel right away. And now I'm going to see how much height I can get out of my piece. I'm trying to keep the fabric as flat as possible, and it looks like I can cut about an additional 5 inches above the pocket. And honestly, I'm going to have to straighten up this edge anyway, so I'm just going to generously rough cut out the rectangular shape that I can salvage from the front of the shirt. If you don't mind the sleeve detail, you could certainly leave the sleeve as it is. Otherwise, I would recommend cutting along one of the stripes or as close to the sleeve seam as possible and cut an additional piece of fabric strip to add to the side. And then repeat the same process for the opposite side so that way you have a continuous pattern without any interference from the diagonal seam edges. Another fun addition would be to add a snap fastener hardware to the pocket to be able to keep it closed and a little bit more secure. We've added a link in the description below for how to add snap fasteners. So I'm going to continue to cut out various rectangles and piece them together so that way I have a front panel that measures the width and the height of my required piece. If you're interested in learning how to assemble the lake pattern, we've added a link in the description below this video so you can follow along with the steps. And here's the end result. The backpack is soft, coastal, and completely one of a kind. I even kept the original button placket for a little added detail on the outside. I love how these projects came out, and they look like a coordinated set that's ready for vacation and everyday adventure. As I mentioned, all 4 of these projects were made with patterns from our Seaside Escape collection. This was truly fun to plan and create. It's so fulfilling to give these materials and well-worn items a fresh new look and functional purpose. I hope that this inspires you to look at secondhand pieces in a new light, whether it's a well-worn pair of jeans, a shirt, or perhaps something else in your closet. Not only is upcycling a more sustainable way to sew, but it also gives your creations a story and personality that's totally unique to you. You can find all of the links to the patterns in the Seaside Escape collection in the description. Each pattern includes a free step-by-step video tutorial to help you make your own version at home. If you make something inspired by this video, tag us using #SallieTomato. We love to see your upcycled creations. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. We can't wait to see what you make with your Sallie Tomato supplies and patterns.